Enthusiasm with multi-tonal voice.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Just turn to whatever, and then just stick to what you enjoy doing, don't you, for your living,
Yeah.
or whatever sells
I
for
think
you.
like Martin Garrix, I think he started as a
Yeah.
classical like Spanish guitar.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Who's that, Sunshine?
Who's Martin Garrix?
Yeah.
He is the guy that did Animal. That was his big one, breakout one, wasn't
Animals, yeah.
Animals.
In the Name of Love.
In the name of love.
He always headlines
it? All the EDM festivals and stuff. innit?
Tomorrowland he has for
Yeah.
the last 3 years.
You know who I found
He's
out
my
about
boy.
recently? Andy C.
Yes.
Didn't realise about this guy.
Isn't he like garage? Andy C.
No, he's like proper EDM.
Drum and bass.
Yeah, drum and bass.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he was one of the sort of original pioneers in London of drum and bass. He has Ram Records is his
Right.
label.
Yeah.
That's pretty sick. Sick name.
Yeah.
Not as sick as Def Jam, though, is it?
Def
Like,
Jam.
What a
Top
name.
Dog. Top Dog
Top
Entertainment.
Dog's all right, yeah.
Not too
Landed
bad.
Media.
Landed
It's
Media,
quite a good
best
one.
one.
Yeah. Can't beat that, can you?
Pretty high up in there.
Are we rolling?
Media game.
Yeah.
We rolling deep.
Rolling deep. A bit of coffee sipping ASMR, but it's all right.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Chewing gum on the mic. We're
Yeah.
professionals.
Yeah,
I like.
sounds good. I feel like I need to make it clear that I'm on day 4 of a prolonged fast.
Okay.
So
Oh
I don't know how quick I'm going to be.
Oh my.
I feel good though.
You're gonna pass out halfway through.
I have a sort of calm. I feel very zen. Sort of a calm
very
focus. Yeah, I don't.
in the fast.
Yeah,
You had heroin
I don't
today?
feel like I could
Some
multitask,
fentanyl.
but I can just
So-
sort of.
When you're 4 days in, have you consumed anything? Like what?
Yeah, so the first 3. This is the first properly strict day. I've done a couple of cheats for the first 3 days.
Right.
I've had a little bit of MCT oil.
Scumbag.
Yeah, yeah.
Cheated.
So just come back. And at those meal times where you get that, you're used to eating, you get the hunger pangs.
Yeah.
We're having a bit of psyllium husk, which is
Psyllium husk?
Yeah, it's just pure fibre
Right.
in a shake, and it literally just fill my stomach, and then I get the signals that I'm full from my stomach, and I
Yeah.
stop being hungry.
That's mad.
But I found the absolute key though was where I've struggled before. This time I've been having a lot more electrolytes, salt,
Yeah.
potassium, magnesium, and it's been an absolute game changer. And it's I feel completely fine now.
And is it like more of a purge you're going for, like purging the system, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's sort of a bit of a reset, kind of a challenge as well. I just want
Yeah.
it. I've
What's
yeah.
the target? How long are you going for?
I'm kind of not telling anyone because
Ooh.
when I've done it in the past, yeah,
6 months?
yeah.
What?
Maybe I'll check it out. Because when I've done it before, I feel it puts too much pressure on it when I say
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
day.
Well, you
So
have to
I'm
then
just
hit
sort of
it.
carrying on and just see how I feel each day.
I'm kind of the same with intermittent fasting. I'm not like consciously thinking about it, but I'm just eating later on in the day.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm still my jury, as I think we discussed last time. My jury's still out about intermittent fasting. I'm still
Are you? Jesus Christ.
invasions. I'm still unsure of the benefits in terms of the long term, like all of the other added bits that it says it does for the hormones and how it balances your body and all that side of it. What I do agree with, that 100% agree that it does work, is it's a method to make you into that calorie deficit. You know, it's a method that ensures you're in a calorific deficit, and if you're in calorific deficit, you're going to lose weight.
Yeah,
So that I completely agree with.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a large part of it. It's just easier if you skip a meal. It's just
You're in a calorific deficit.
Yeah, it's easier to eat less.
Yeah. So my jury's still out, but I know
but
it's getting a lot of love.
I mean, I've heard it said that I believe they were human trials that they did, because a lot of them are on mice. But the
Intermittent
yeah, and then
fasting
you
on
go,
mice.
Yeah, that's a bit. But I think people that if they ate within an 8-hour window, and some people ate within a 15-hour window, but they ate exactly the same food, exactly the same calories, but the people that ate within the 8-hour window lost body fat and gained muscle mass.
Yeah.
But they had
they
the
retained the
same
muscle mass.
calories, the same nutrition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's got to be something behind it, because you've obviously got the decision of, that was my boots, by the way.
Yeah. I'm just quite mature.
Yeah, there's that, obviously the argument of the 3 square meals a day, compared to, a lot of sort of more high-end bodybuilders actually eat 5 meals a day, and it's smaller meals and then snacking, and then there's the whole grazing theory, which is to maintain muscle mass at the best possible amount without it deteriorating at all, is to constantly eat. So you never actually have meals, you're just constantly snacking. So there's the whole theory of, if you're never hungry, you're never in a deficit, so you're never going to be losing weight. But your body's going to be getting the nutrients you want. So if you just reduce that amount, you're still never hungry, but your body's still getting the nutrition it wants. So it's sort of like there's science for all of them. So it just sort of
it's so often in nutrition you'll get two equally qualified people saying exactly
Battling it
opposite
out.
things, and you go, they both have a point. And it always just comes down to what
You've
you
got
go
to
on,
try it,
and your unique genetics. There's just so many
Yeah.
factors with it, aren't there?
I think that's it. You've just got to try it. haven't
Yeah,
you?
that's
You've got to try it for yourself.
You've got to be a human guinea pig to all the different methods and see what works for you, haven't you?
And give it time as well. A lot of people, especially with diets, they'll do it for 5-6 weeks, a month, maybe 2 months max, and they're like, no, it didn't work for me. It's like, you've been doing it for 2 months. You've been living your actual diet for like 25, 30 years. You've tried this for 2 months. Of course it's not worked.
Yeah.
Like, the proportions don't work.
Yeah, and the results aren't always linear with it, are they? You could you could be consistent for 2 months and plateau for a month, couldn't you? And then all of a sudden, your body just
Something
recomposes all of a sudden.
Or you have a refeed day, or you know, as you're doing now, you have an extra 4 days where you're like, proper kick it. You just don't know. You've got to try it. I would say if you want to give any diet or any training program or anything a proper go, give it 6 months. I would say. You know, I think 6 months is a good time where you can get a decent understanding of how that works, and it gives your body enough time to adapt to it, but you're not fully dedicated to it. And as we know, 6 months nowadays, like when you're a kid, 6 months is like the end of the world, isn't it? Like that's such a long period of time. Now 6 months is just
flies
gone.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'd say 6 months.
Yeah, what's the thing with if you're trying to eat a ketogenic as well, for the first week or two, you're gonna feel like dick until your body works out how to use the fats. So you need to do it strict for a month at least.
But
then once your body's learned how to do it, you've got the metabolic flexibility
to go back and forth.
Yeah, exactly.
In and out of ketosis.
So say if you overeat one day, you could just fast the next day. And your body will remember how to do it.
That's pretty solid.
So it's useful. But for me, it's just the only way I can, like you say, I can stay at a calorie deficit reliably, because I've just got an addictive personality. If I've that carb fat combo, I just can't stop it. Like if I have a Ben and Jerry's or a burger or chips,
You've seen the bottom of that.
I'm going deep.
I'm pretty sure we giggled about this last time as well, didn't we? I'll go deep.
Am I the only one with this coffee here?
Yeah, we finished.
Have we finished your coffees already?
Yeah, we don't.
Savages.
We don't fuck
mess
about.
around, mate. We don't mess around.
I might crack
There you go.
into,
There's the explicit button.
might crack into the bubbly.
The middle class water.
Yeah.
Oh.
Highland Spring, sparkling.
Tell the people of the story of why you haven't had sparkling water for a few days.
Oh, well, I went into Tesco to buy some, and they only had plastic bottles. So I waited until I could get to Waitrose for the glass bottle.
Fully support that.
But this is the Rolls Royce of sparkling mineral water.
That's it.
Yeah. Would you like that? No, I'm okay with regular working class tap water. Thank you very much.
Right. You could have gone through the whole climate change. Like, I didn't want to get the plastic, but you just went for that privileged life.
Yeah.
When you're fasting, this is all I've got left. Yeah,
Bubbles. Bubbles seals the deal.
There we go.
That's getting some people going right now.
Yeah, everyone's rushing off to the toilet.
I like you're holding it into the mic as well.
It's going for quite a while. It's quite a big vessel. Okay, right.
That's a chalice.
We're ready to go.
Jeez.
This professionalness is not going well for us, is it?
It's
We've been
pretty.
slurping.
Yeah, you can probably still hear it bubbling.
That's always been an idea of mine.
Put it on the floor.
You see those views that those ASMR people get, and I'm like, fuck, I can do that.
Yeah.
Just film someone just chowing down. You see those Asian chicks, they get like 100 million views, and they're just like, just eating a bucket of
people are
KFC.
paying them on like Patreon and stuff.
Bro, you should
just to
quit your
sit there
job.
chow
I'll just film you just eating like KFC.
Everything.
Yeah.
There's professional gamers, and people just give them money while they're
Yeah.
watching them play for no reason.
Yeah.
Just put it in their Patreon account.
Twitch,
You're like,
yeah.
thanks, bro. Yeah, Twitch, isn't it?
You could do it on YouTube. No, Patreon.
enough.
That's the one. Not
Patreon,
YouTube.
yeah. Well,
Does YouTube have it now? They have that
I
platform.
think so. Yeah. Well, Patreon's essentially a subscription service.
Yeah.
Which allows you to access data through the Patreon site itself.
Is that
So-
like, do you pay? The more you pay, the more you get. Is that the thing?
I'm not sure. I haven't got a Patreon account, so I can't say. The outside in looking that I'm assuming is you pay to enter. There might be different grades of membership, and then all those like Insta sluts are like they put a thong picture on Instagram. They're like, swipe up for my Patreon. You pay £5 a month or something, and then
How much?
A subscription.
all you
How
see is
deep
the
are you
thong
in
moves to
this,
the left.
bro?
Yeah.
Are
You
you-
could give that money to
Are
charity.
You're like, you got like £300 a month coming out.
I'm just observant, man. Just observant. I see these things.
Yeah, this is for research analysis.
And also, if you go on Reddit, they've like broken them all out anyway. So don't pay for OnlyFans, kids. Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyway, so you can access on Patreon. You can access the different data. So Insta sluts, so Insta models and stuff will put stuff up, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, for exclusive content, go to this. You go to that, and it shows it. Or even some YouTubers, they'll put a bunch of videos on their YouTube, and they're like, oh, for this specific video, go to my Patreon. So it's like they release data
You know,
just for the Patreon.
I have seen that. When you get like camera masterclasses of people that have like, if you want to see the behind the scenes of how we produce
Yeah.
the shot, pay this fee.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, don't get me wrong, like if there was something like we're talking about those colours behind the scenes,
Yeah.
the studio in Berlin,
That's insane.
I'd pay some money to see how they did that, because I think like that's a feat in itself.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that little
Yeah.
insight of $5 thong pics, maybe.
Yeah, go for it.
Excellent. So tell us about your recent trip.
Yeah, dude.
My recent trip.
South Africa, was it?
It was, yeah. So, how long when was I here last time? I can't remember.
Check now on the
months
last video uploaded.
Yeah. Yeah, so since then, it wasn't even really on the cards, I don't think. It wasn't an option. I think we spoke then about, obviously, me being into saving water and looking after the oceans and stuff, which obviously gave a little bit of a insight into the fact that I'm into that kind of conservation, if I can, kind of world, doing my little bits and trying to leave the world a little bit better than when I turned up, sort of thing. So it's all sort of backs into that. So I was I'm the type of person that as soon as I'm treading water, I get bored and I have to find something else.
Yeah.
So within the fire service at the moment, I'm sort of ticking over and I'm doing what I need to do. I've stepped away from one of my other projects with Essex Boot Camp, not doing that as regularly anymore. So it allowed me with a little bit more free time. So immediately I filled that free time with online learning courses and loads of other stuff anyway. But in the motion of researching what courses I'm going to do, I was looking at projects abroad, volunteering or working with conservation and anti-poaching projects. And I stumbled upon a website called Veterans for Wildlife, which is a charity sort of non-profit organisation that's set up by South African ex-British forces. So they are, most of them anyway, are British forces that are South African residents, because they're Commonwealth countries. They come over and they work in the British forces and they fight for the British forces, and then when they resettle they go back to South Africa, and then they use those skills that they developed and learned to put into anti-poaching. So that's where it sort of started, and now it's morphed into an incredible opportunity that they not only do they give veterans the opportunity to go and use their skills that they learned in the forces to help with anti-poaching projects, they also empower the veterans themselves to help with that transition. So I think I spoke about it last time, where, you know, when you do leave the forces, you have that lack of identity, and that belonging to something bigger, you really struggle to find that again. If you go into something like the police, the fire service, or you create your own brand, something like that, that can obviously really help with that transition. But if you don't, and you've got a sort of a keenness for wildlife and conservation, then Veterans for Wildlife give you that avenue. You know, they get you back into the sort of world of project work. They get you back into the world of travel. You're using those skills that you learn to make a difference and to sort of really help whatever the situation, whatever the project is. So they've got a three-pronged attack, which is to, conserve, to educate, and to empower. I haven't butchered that. That isn't their actual wording, but it's that kind of idea. So it's not just a conservationist charity, they're also a veterans and transition charity as well. But yeah, so I stumbled across them online, and on their website, I was flicking through the website, and there's a bunch of different photos, obviously just promotion photos from different previous projects and things like that. And it's a relatively new charity, but they've actually got quite a lot of pedigree from Royal Marines that are in the limelight at present, if you like. So Foxy, Jason Fox, from SAS Who Dares Wins, and he done the Real Narcos on Channel 4, and he's released books and stuff. He's a big supporter of Veterans for Wildlife, so he's on the website. And there's another one called Jag something or other, I can't remember his surname, but he's actually on a project with them at the moment. And he's a big supporter of it. He's he does a lot of Shark Week work and things like that, so he's sort of in the world as well. And then there was Aldo Kane, who does a lot of work with Steve Buckshaw now, or Brickshaw.
Steve Backshaw.
Backshaw, that's the one. Yeah, the wildlife guy that goes into all different environments and things like that. And he's worked with them and some other things. So some key faces that are all former Royal Marines, former Special Forces, that are sort of like pinging up. And then I saw one gentleman called Glenn Stein, who's a South African guy, and I recognised him. He's got a full beard now, and I was like, where do I recognise that guy? And when you ping someone and you're like, I know that face, and it takes you a few days to click. And I was on Instagram, I was on Facebook, looking at mutual friends, trying to work out where I knew him from, and he was in my company at 4-2. So it was sort of like, once I started seeing that, when you're apprehensive about signing up to any projects that you're not sort of aware of, because obviously you can't really validate them, can you? You don't want to put all your private information to sign up for something and then it be a hoax or whatever. You just want to be wary and make sure you can trust the source. So after I saw that and figured out who it was, I thought, oh yeah, I'll fire an application off. So I fired off an application, and it's essentially you send off your CV, a basic application form, and it all happened really quick actually. So I fired all that off as we'll see what happens. About a week or a couple of days later, I received the automatic email saying, we've accepted your application. Please understand that we get loads of applications every day, and we'll get to yours as soon as we can, and we try and allocate your skills to whatever project we got going on. Fast forward about 4 weeks, I was flying into Johannesburg to start on my first project.
Nice.
And it was literally as quick as that.
That's what a great organisation. I love it.
Incredible.
I studied conservation science, my undergrad, so it's
Awesome.
something close to my heart.
Yeah.
But so what was talk us through your experience when you arrived? And
Yeah, so it's they've got a bunch of different projects going on around South Africa and African countries. And the one I was on was in South Africa itself, working in Kruger National Park, one of the biggest national parks there.
yeah,
Now, because it's an ongoing operation, and anti-poaching for rhinos, which is what I was working on, is it's essentially a war at the moment. So there's some details that I can't give just because it may jeopardise what's going on, and I could probably say more, but I don't want to risk saying anything that might give anything away.
Keep it for your Patreon subscribers.
Yeah, I'll keep it for my OnlyFans. So yeah, I'll say what I can, but I don't want to overshare. It's not trying to be sneaky beaky, and I'm not trying to hype it up to be anything that it wasn't. I just don't want to overshare and then get a text from one of the guys that I was working with or working for and say, you can't say that, mate, and then the whole podcast goes off the books.
Totally.
Yeah, but essentially we're working in Kruger National Park, and we're supporting local projects and local funded projects using our skills set from the forces to help in anti-poaching. And the area that we were working in was mainly based around a sort of surveillance type equipment in that area. and we were helping to run that from an ops room sort of perspective.
So you guys, you guys more of an on the operational side, or was there any boots on the ground, gun over your shoulder stuff?
No, mainly the project we were doing was more of a operational support role. So we were in the ops room and monitoring systems and giving advice and trying to coordinate when needed the Rangers interceptions and arresting sort of projects when they needed to.
That's so crucial.
Yeah, it's insane. So the area that we're working in Kruger National Park, it has had, since this system's been in place, it's had like a 95% increase in success, if you like. So from the stats that it was, is 95% now completely secure, which is incredible when you think about it, because Kruger National Park is the size of Wales. So this area that we're working in is about 40,000 hectares, and essentially that is now poaching free.
Wow.
Obviously not
thanks to you,
100%.
bro.
Hell of an achievement.
Yeah, so we were out there for a 2-week deployment, working on that system, and what they do is they roll it constantly. It has specific time frames, but it's an ongoing operation, shall we say. So there's times where it gets more ramped up, times that it gets more ramped down, which comes on to the operational security part of it. You don't want to give out when they're mainly doing it and when they're mainly not.
Is that why they operate by a 2-week contract, or is that so they can, if they need more people, they can bring more people in, rather than saying like, PJ, let's get you for 6 months?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of things, really. One of the reasons is it's volunteer work. So 99% of people can't afford to give up much more than 2-3 weeks. By the time you fly in, you do your 2-week deployment, fly out, that's 3 weeks. And anyone doing a normal job, it's difficult to get 3 weeks off. They pay for absolutely everything, but you still need to not earn for that period of time.
Of course.
If you're on salary, you're still using your holiday to be able to do it. So that's definitely an influencing factor. The fluctuation in the current system and how they're operating and what they're driving and what project they're sort of pushing towards at the time in terms of what their aim is will obviously dictate how many people come in and out and how long the deployment is. But also I think obviously it's not just about helping conservation, and in my one it was saving the Rhino. It's also to empower veterans. So if they essentially limit to 2-3 weeks, then they can get another veteran out in 2-3 weeks, so they're helping more people.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture, I believe.
You've just got hair on your cap that's distracting.
Well, it's definitely not mine.
What was, in terms of finding them, I don't know if you mentioned before, but like, how was their awareness? Like, how did you reach out to them in terms of, did you see them advertising on Facebook? Did they do targeted adverts to you? Or did you go out and see like, how can I get involved with something? And then that came up.
Yeah, so me personally, I sort of, now obviously I've been onto their website a few times and I'm now following some of their social media. Now I see any sponsored posts and things like that. My understanding is they do a little bit on social media, but it's limited. Something that I would say about Veterans for Wildlife is they could benefit more from doing some more of the ground level awareness and crowdfunding aspects, because they're not a very well known charity, but they are growing. But most of their fundraising comes from the higher echelons of society, if you like. So they've got someone that works constantly in those circles for high value donations or high value benefactors, things like that.
Yeah.
So they're captivating that market, which is obviously huge, but I don't think they're tapping into the lower echelons
like you
more.
say, that would lend itself so well to a good promo video for
100%, yeah.
Give us a shout. I'll
crowdfunding.
come to Johannesburg.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
Landed media.
Yeah.
Well, they did have some on BBC Scotland about a few weeks ago. I wish I could forward you onto it because I can't remember where it was, but they did a project in Namibia, I believe, and one of the guys that was on there was reached out to through his social media by a filmmaker for BBC. BBC Scotland flew out and did I think it was about a 10-15 minute segment on what they're doing out there. So that is something that they've done.
That's great.
which is awesome. But there is a lot more they could be doing, and I think little things like obviously Help for Heroes really started the merchandising for charity sort of movement. They're the ones that really, in my mind anyway, started selling merchandise to fund a charity. Now obviously everyone else, loads of other charities do it, from wristbands to jumpers to hats and things like that. And Kevin Peterson, the English cricketer, he's actually South African, and he has his own line of, or works with a company that has his own line of anti-poaching sort of stuff, but it's again quite high market. And they've just recently done a anti-poaching special edition watch with Hublot. Is that what you say it? Hublot? Hublot.
Sure.
It's a very expensive
Yeah.
watch. They're like 14 grand a piece, you know. So the higher echelons are getting into the merchandising, but they're not really tapping into the lower roots.
It's a really difficult world, because not only have you got this kind of global buffer, like people that live in the UK, when you see things on the media, you're thinking like, that doesn't really affect my life, so I'm not going to put so much attention to it. So you've got that certain buffer that's coming into place. But also like our attention span now. I used to make promo videos like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
That was like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now it's 60 seconds.
Yeah, max.
Like I'm working with people that are like, we need to make a strong 60-second ad. And now it's even 30 seconds. So I was showing someone a video 2.5 minutes long, and they're like, man, when is this over? And I was thinking like, oh yeah, because that was filmed 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's
But
over
now it's like, give me the message now. So I think people that obviously a little bit older, like those higher echelon, they'll probably have more time to look into that stuff.
Yeah.
If you're trying to reach millennials or people that are younger generation, you gotta make it something short and snappy. So I think in terms of their advertising, I think they would have to be a bit more on point with that. Not that I've seen anything so far.
No, and I think that's something that if they're not, they should be looking into. And as I say, they've created a sub-brand which is perfect for merchandising, called Mad Rhino. And it comes with a hashtag Mad Rhino, and it's on the bonnet of their like the wagon that they use out there, their vehicles and stuff like that. So they've got their corporate branding, which is Veterans for Wildlife. It's like a silhouette of a rhino in like an African sunset, which is it's actually really good artwork. But then they've also got the fundraising arm, which is an angry looking rhino, which is like cartoonized and pretty cool. And I've seen sort of mugs and stuff as well, so I don't know if they're looking at prototypes and things to maybe go into that. But the only thing they've got at the moment is, if you go onto the website, there's donation options. So if you're into conservation, Veterans for Wildlife website, drop them some money.
Yeah.
And that works. But yeah, I think that's something they could really tap into.
And that goes directly into their action. It's not
100%.
It's not some bullshit.
No.
You're paying for someone to hand a leaflet on the street. That's going directly to them.
So that's something that I would, because it's still one of those small charities. Obviously, if you give to Red Cross, Salvation Army, you know, a million Oxfam,
Gets lost in the pile.
a million and a half
Yeah.
other things. Yeah, don't get me wrong, they are doing good work, but I think the Red Cross or Oxfam could be either one. There was a figure where like only 30% of the funds that you donate,
Yes, Red Cross.
go to actually the thing. Because of the size of the structure, they've got to be able to fund it, which makes sense. But if you want to actually support what's happening on the ground, you have to go to those lower echelons of charity. The problem with that is they're not verified. But it's from someone that's actually done the project. You know, if you want to help conservation, especially rhino conservation, I know for a fact there's like operations and deployments going on right now that are helping do that. And if you put £10 in the pot, £5 in the pot, £20 in the pot on Veterans for Wildlife, I guarantee that is paying for anything down to the food for a veteran to be out there to help on one of the surveillance systems, or it's paying for the cab fare from the airport to the operating area for the guy to deliver his skills on that ranging training program.
Does it pay for equipment?
It does, yeah. So there's a mixture of stuff, because most of the things that Veterans for Wildlife provide is based around service. So they do a lot of training with rangers, which obviously if you're training a ranger, you need a lot of equipment to be able to support that training. So the rangers themselves will be issued weapons, they'll be issued kit, they'll be issued a lot of other stuff. But in terms of being able to supply the range equipment, the ammunition, any surveillance equipment, things you want to teach them on, you need to supply that.
Yeah.
And Veterans for Wildlife are also giving these rangers items and compasses and anything that they can use to do their job easier and better.
So presumably the boots on the ground guys are local people employed locally, are they?
Yeah.
And then you're communicating with them.
Yeah,
So
a mixture.
are you presumably you're learning off of each other, and then are they picking? Do you find that your skills that you've learned are helpful to them on the ground as well?
Yeah, so everything you ever do is obviously always a skill share. You know, you're always learning from and passing on information. In the role that I was doing, it wasn't really a training environment, but other projects that they do concurrently are training current rangers to do patrols, to do, they only really, especially wildlife conservation rangers, field rangers as they're called in most places, they're not necessarily trained as soldiers. They're not trained as soldiers, full stop. And unfortunately, because of the militarisation of anti-poaching and it being corrupted by, and it being corrupted by organised crimes, it has now become more and more like a war. And you need soldiers to fight a war.
Yeah.
The funding in the country isn't always there, and the skills aren't always there to train those field rangers in soldiering skill sets to be able to conduct the roles. So a lot of the projects that Veterans for Wildlife do is go out there and provide those products and services that the rangers themselves can benefit from, and use those skills that you've learned from the military into what shouldn't be a military role. It shouldn't be a soldier's role, but it has become one. And a lot of it is based around teaching them patrolling skills, teaching them observation points, range technique, firing and manoeuvre, basic soldiering really, so that they can operate better and safer, and less rangers die and they can protect more rhinos. So it's always a skill share, because they've got the local knowledge, they've got the time on the ground, they've got the tracking skill that is paramount to 90% of what they do. So it's always a skill share, but you know, there's always that you're teaching them something, and from basic skills.
Where does the funding for the rangers come from? Is that government, or presumably a lot of that's subsidised from safari tourism?
Yeah, so it all depends really. So you've got, in South Africa specifically, you've got sand parks, which I believe is South African national parks. And they own the national parks, so the ones that are owned by the government essentially. So they'll have rangers funded through that system, which is obviously paid for by safari tourism, things like that. But there's also a lot of private reserves, there's rhino farms, there's orphanages, there's a wide range of private reserves, as I said, that are like also support tourism, and that's how they run and things like that. So there's a mixture of who's pays for the rangers, but especially as with anything, the private sector of it seems to be a little bit better equipped, because they can charge more, they don't have to spend as much on a wider surface, so they're a little bit better protected in a way. But as with anything government funded, it's underfunded, and all the rangers are underfunded, they're under-equipped, they're under-trained. Don't get me wrong, there's some incredible guys doing some incredible work, but they're underfunded, undertrained, and under-equipped. And you know, you'll have, in a sector of say 40,000 hectares, you might have like 7 rangers looking after that space. That's 7 rangers looking after a space the size of like Cardiff.
Yeah.
You know, it's a ridiculous
When I
amount.
was in South Africa for a month. I went to a privately owned reserve that had rhinos on it. I was told a few months before, someone had the rhino was so valuable. Someone actually just came in a helicopter and just gunned it down from the helicopter, cut the hole and flew off. You're just like,
insane.
Jesus, what's it
can
come
you-
to?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the value of rhino horn. Like, rhino are actually more valuable dead than they are alive, because the horn at the moment is worth about $60,000 per kilo. Which, when you consider it's a substance that's has the same properties as a human fingernail.
It's keratin.
Yeah, there's nothing there. It has
I don't
no.
understand. What is it
medicinal.
used for? Is it for medicine? Is that what they're doing it for?
Primarily, yeah. So it's the primary use at the moment is in Chinese traditional medicine. So there's a couple of beliefs that are it cures cancer, it can cure infidelity, it can give you an erection, it can treat all these things. No
Just snake
science,
oil, really, isn't it?
yeah, no
Yeah,
science
has
at
no
all
medical benefits.
has no
it's
medical
just
benefit.
keratin.
So I don't understand. So obviously, has the Chinese government been, if it's something that is obviously a regional thing, has the Chinese government kind of enforced like this is not helping you at all?
I think that's one of the problems, is there has been no directive, and there's high level corruption based around it. You know, it's not the only use. You know, traditional medicine's probably the biggest that they're sort of leaning towards and saying that that's the biggest contributor to it. Vietnam and China, Vietnam's more of a facilitator, China's more of the consumer, but it is quite big in Vietnam as well in terms of consuming. It's actually transitioned recently from being more herbal and traditional medicine into being more of a status symbol. So the emerging middle class in China,
So it's become a bit like ivory.
it's completely
That's so
surpassed
interesting.
ivory a huge amount. So ivory at the moment is only worth about $700 per kilo, which is about $1,000 per kilo last year, and it's only about $700 a kilo now. $700 a kilo for ivory. Now, there's a few different arguments of why that value has decreased, but one of the contributing factors has got to be the fact that rhino horn has taken over as being the in thing in the Chinese
fashion.
middle classes. Yeah, and now that is like $65,000. To put that into perspective, obviously ivory, something that has been a hot topic for a little while, is only $700 per kilo. You know, gold, this morning gold was worth $48,000 per kilo. So 22,000 extra dollars in excess of per kilo is how much rhino horn's worth. And it's made out the same thing that's made your human fingernail. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense.
Bonkers.
You could just go grave digging and
Just pick some fingernails.
yeah,
just go for it.
Just cut your nails.
Yeah.
Just store them up.
bro, we can
Yeah.
make 68 grand if we just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so press them together.
Yeah, I mean that's
Into a rhino shape.
I mean,
Yeah.
you got like maybe like 5 grams worth of nails, so maybe you got, you know,
Yeah.
maybe about 2,000 dead
We'd
bodies.
probably we'd probably make $1 million in a modern art museum.
Yeah, you would. But it's just ridiculous. And some of the things they're doing now is they're actually mixing their rhino horn, they're grinding it down, which is how they do the ingest
Medicinal.
it for medicinal.
Yeah.
But they're actually using it to put into their cocaine. So cocaine dealers are getting a win-win out of it because they're diluting a substance that is quite expensive already. Cocaine is only about sort of anything to be, you know, a couple of $100 per kilo, American dollars per kilo, but they're diluting this substance with a more expensive substance. So the dealer's sitting there going, I'm charging you extra for something that's now weaker.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? Like, you're literally just giving more money. And
That's what you should powder your fingernails for.
yeah,
There you
We're
go.
onto something.
the idea is it gives you that extra aggression and kick.
It's all bullshit.
Yeah. But you say about high level government, that's the issue, and there's no directive coming down because it's such, the use of rhino horn is so ingrained in Asian culture. For example, you know the terracotta warriors. Well, from the same period, the most highly used material for the terracotta warrior sort of period armor was rhino hide. So when you've got something that's that ingrained in a culture, you know, from all those hundreds and thousands of years ago, that connects them as the strongest thing in the world. That's why these incredible warriors used it. So now when you fast forward all the way to here, when people are saying to you, or herbal doctors are saying, you know, that rhino can cure cancer, which is one of the biggest things that they say it's for, you go, well, you know, if it's used back then, it's such a big part of our culture, you can understand that it is hard to believe.
It's a difficult one because you're trying to like debunk a tradition, but also like not disrespecting the heritage. And it's a difficult one because sometimes you have to educate.
Yeah.
But I
It's just
think-
a lack of education.
But it's just
around the
interesting how
issue, isn't it?
they're not making any effort.
No.
Well, not that I know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just you know, Veterans for Wildlife. You know, it seems to be all like more Western volunteers,
Yeah.
and obviously South African volunteers.
Yeah, obviously there's a heavy influence in South Africa because the most poached rhino in the world come from South Africa, and the rest of Africa as well. But you know, the majority of Asian or of rhino on the Asian market, and the wildlife trafficking is worth like 16 billion a year, and the majority of rhino come from South Africa when you look in the Asian market, and it can be traced back to South Africa. So they're obviously a heavy influence in it, but then you've got a lot of problems from South Africa itself. The previous government, one of the high-level security ministers, was actually linked to a rhino horn trafficker, a Chinese native or Vietnamese native trafficker in the country, and they're like, he's on the documentary Stroop, which is on Amazon Prime at the moment, and it shows pictures of this high-level minister at this guy's house and chilling with him, and it's like when you've got that level of corruption and connection, it's like no wonder nothing.
Yeah, you can't really make a big dent in that.
No.
But then it's always supply and demand. Like if they put such heavy sanctions in Asia, then that would translate.
Definitely.
You know.
And you know, you've got to think, if it's going from South Africa all the way to China or Vietnam, that's passing a lot of borders. That's a lot of customs people on the take that has to pass through, or not necessarily on the take, with inefficient customs processes.
Yeah, I mean, how do you transport a horn that's like that big? You cut it down, or
That's the thing. Like, if you think of the amount of enormous containers though that passes through each port,
Yeah, they're not going to
it's
your.
easy to hide even something that big.
They're not going through Gatwick.
They haven't got time to
you know,
search every single container.
This is true.
It's,
This is true.
Yeah, I've seen so many mad examples of people hiding like narcotics. There'll be one I remember, saw a video probably from Facebook or something, and they had like a big quarry pile, like big rocks, but they had containers like that painted exactly like rocks mixed in with these. So you have like maybe 10 tons of rubble, and some of the rubble is actually a container painted to be a rock, and then you crack it in half, and inside is a bag of drugs.
Yeah.
And it's like,
insane, isn't it?
man, how they make these
It's like,
genius.
imagine opening up that container full of rocks and going, right, we're gonna search all these
Yeah.
rocks, lads.
Someone bring a hammer and a chisel.
Yeah, you got like, it's literally like cracking them open.
Yeah.
And it's just the extremes that people go is absolutely, I mean, in some word, like, is incredible. It's so.
I mean, it is, and the problem is you've got a whole systemic problem all the way through.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a culture that believes it can cure cancer, and that it's like a symbol for if people are terminally ill, they'll give it a piece of rhino horn to say, you know, it's a symbol of we've done everything we can for you physically in the world.
It just baffles me
ridiculous.
though, because how many people have to have cancer and have rhino horn and then die? You go,
Yeah, there's
hang on,
no
I don't
correlation.
think this is working.
Yeah.
Everyone who keeps having terminal cancer that we give a rhino horn to dies. It doesn't seem to be doing anything.
I think it comes down to, because it's an underground substance, you can't. All the figures on it are all estimates, aren't they? So if you imagine, if it was from a doctor saying that, they'll be issuing it out and going, hold on a minute, this ain't working. Let's change something. But it's not. They're buying it back streets because they think it's going to help.
They probably
Yeah.
think, oh, it wasn't real rhino horn. It
That
was
one
something
didn't
else.
work because X, Y, Z. It'll work next time.
Yeah.
You know, because there's no official take on it.
Yeah. That was just fingernail, that one.
Yeah, and you just don't know, you know, and like on that Stroop documentary as well, they tested a wide range in this market that they bought in Vietnam, and I think like 25% were actually fakes. So the market's flooded with fakes as well. But it's a really difficult one. Like when I first went out to work on the project, I was sort of morally like, well, you know, who are the poachers? You know, and you've got to think about that. Who are the poachers? And they're essentially the guys on the townships that have got nothing. They live in a zinc shack that, although they live on the edge of the park, because of apartheid and the fact that they had no money, they've never actually been in the park. They weren't allowed up until, I want to say the 70s, 80s, maybe even as close to the 90s. They weren't allowed in the park because they were black. This is their own country. And it's like, now they're allowed in, but a lot of them, they still can't afford it because they live in a township, they don't have anything.
No, you can't judge in that position.
So when someone turns up and says, right, you know,
I'll give you $10,000.
give you $10,000 to go and kill one rhino, take the horn, you sort of go, all right, yeah, that makes sense. However, where you lose your empathy for that is that a strong percentage of those poachers, even if they get caught or not, they're repeat offenders.
Right.
They actually go back and do it again. So you think, well, you're not doing it just to get your family out of the slums, you're doing it out of greed. And a lot of it is actually funded and everything by organised crime. So yes, the lower end people are the guys that are suffering in the township. It's the same with every single crime in the world of a business performer. You know, all of the guys on the ground when they're dealing drugs are the guys that are a little bit, you know, they're the guys in the ghetto,
One of
that
those,
sort of thing.
they have to be stopped, but you understand why they're doing
It's
it.
an economic issue that causes them to do it potentially. But what else loses your empathy for them is the manner that they do it. And a lot of it, so they usually work in 3-man teams. You have one with a weapon, one with the axe, which they use for the dehorning process, and one runner, if you like, with a bag that they'll put the horno in. They'll carry a little bit of food and a little bit of water for the rest of the team, so they can move quickly in and out. But what makes you lose that additional empathy for them is the manner that they actually conduct themselves, because there's about 2 to 3 inches of horn within the rhino, sort of down inside, and they want that out too. And a lot of the time, because bullets are expensive, they'll only shoot one into the spine to demobilize the animal, and then they'll hack the face off
Keep
with
them
the
alive.
axe while they're still alive. And a
seen
lot
that.
of the time they've got calves and stuff right next to them, and weirdly enough, the calves, rhinos have a really big dependency on each other, and a lot of calves suffer like PTSD like symptoms because they've seen their parents hacked to death, or maybe not even died, hacked to pieces by these people. And there's whole orphanage that have problems, you know, with rhinos that have ongoing depression and issues, because they've got such a huge bond with their parents that they stay so close to them for such a long period of time. And there's stories of rhino calves not starving to death next to their parents because their parents have been poached and they don't know what else to do. And they starve to death there, or even living inside of their parents as they've been attacked by different scavengers. They've migrated to live almost inside until they die. And it's, you know, that's countless stories, and they're just the ones that are being picked up and seen. You know, it's such a vast area, South Africa and Africa, that you can only record the rhinos that you find, the carcasses that you find. Think of all the ones that you can't find, and all the orphans that you can't account for. You know, in 2017, South Africa lost 1,027 rhino
That's
in the year.
incredible.
You know, that works out to be about 2.7 rhino a day were lost in South Africa. You know, and you think, if that continues, there's only about 25,000 left in the wild, in the world. Only about 25,000 rhinos left in the world, right? So if we're losing 1,000 a year, it's only
They'll be
25
gone in your
years
lifetime.
left.
But, you know.
So by the time our grandkids are going to school, rhinos won't be a thing. You know, this is an animal that's been around since dinosaur times. They look like dinosaurs because they essentially are dinosaurs, you know, and they've got no natural predator at all. So they're like elephants, you know, they're going to be around for
Reproductive
everything.
cycle very slow.
Yeah, because they don't need to, because nothing kills them. And unfortunately, evolution's made them into an animal that is like that because they've got no natural predator. They're easy to track. As you said, their reproduction's so slow because they've never needed to be so quick. And, you know, they're massive animals, and they're, as I say, they're really easy to track. So what they call, South Africans call spoor, so it's just tracks. But a rhino, what they'll do to mark their territory is they make what's called essentially a toilet called a midden, and they dig a big hole, they shit in it, and it sends out their pheromones and stuff, and it marks their territory. So poachers, all they need to do is wander in an area where they know that there's rhino, wait to find a midden, yep, this one's quite fresh, and then follow the massive footprints until they hit that rhino. You know, because they've never had to evolve into anything to avoid being tracked. So they don't help themselves, obviously, but they can't. They're rhinos.
Yeah. Man, it just feels like as much effort as you want to put in, it's such a large scale issue that's like, how much of a dent are you putting into this? I mean, on the shallow end, of course, it's helping, but like really, there's a systematic issue.
Yeah.
That that's going to be so difficult.
Yeah.
And the only way that's going to happen is by extreme measures. And really, as soon as you start introducing any extreme measures, you're going to get instant backlash.
Yeah.
Especially if someone's higher ups funding billions into this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're going to do everything in their power. So, is that through an educational thing?
I think it's a very difficult situation, and it comes hand in hand with everything. You know, the easy wins are essentially at the coalface. So it's like let's relate it to plastics in the ocean. An easy win to reduce plastic in the ocean is to get a bunch of people together, go to the ocean, go to the beach, clear out that plastic, move it out of the way. Right? So that's the same essentially as training more rangers to be able to stop poachers. Right? That's the same sort of level that we're working at. Yes, it's an easy win because you see immediate results. However, you're just treating the symptoms. You're not treating the actual disease.
It needs at-source education.
It needs at-source education. It needs bureaucracy to be changed. It needs support from the higher echelons. And it needs a lifestyle change. That's what it needs. Same with plastic in the oceans. It needs people to realise that they need to stop doing that. And how does that happen? That's with education, that's with policy changes, and that sort of thing. It's the exact same with rhino poaching. You know, you need that cultural change mainly in Asia. You need the bureaucracy to change and the politics to change to support that and to push that education, to push that security. But the problem is, as you say, that costs a lot of money, it costs a lot of funding, and it's not really the topic of conversation at the moment.
No.
You know,
I think
there is high level corruption. The people in power that have the power to push that.
Yeah.
As soon as
it's not in their interest.
And it's like,
likely.
If any gangster movies ever taught me anything, as soon as you try to infiltrate that, you're gonna get capped.
Yeah. Yeah. No one messes with the top.
No, how are you gonna try and get in through that?
It always takes courageous individuals, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's no excuse for not trying, though, is it?
No, and that's why I appreciate the efforts people like you, PJ, that have tried their best, and their continued support.
I think it's one of those sort of things, like especially as say in modern world, we only want to help what's on topic at the moment, and on topic at the moment is climate change. So everyone at the moment is looking at climate change. That's the world issue that people are focusing on. And what normally happens when you come up and you talk about rhino poaching, one of the biggest things that people say is, yes, we agree it's a problem, but this is a bigger problem. Why aren't we dealing with this? And there's smarter people than me that could probably triage and prioritise our world's problems. That's undeniable. There probably is people that can do that. But I can't. So what I do is I change what I can change and I control what I can control. So it's essentially you pick the charities you want to support and you support them in the ways that you can. And if everyone in the world does that, or everyone that has the ability does that, then we're going to make a difference. If everyone has the attitude of, I'm not going to do anything because there's a bigger issue to worry about, we still do nothing. It's the age-old saying of evil only prevails when good men stand by and do nothing. And it's the same sort of thing with this. Yes, climate change is the biggest issue at the moment. That's what people are talking about. And yes, 100% it's an issue. Is conserving rhinos as big of an issue? Who's to say yes, who's to say no?
But it's not a one or the other choice.
But it's not a one or the other choice. And if you can change climate change, then do something about it. It all comes down to what I like to say is do the little things that you can. There's so many little things you can change in your daily lifestyle that's going to help climate change, that's going to help anti-poaching, that's going to help plastic in the ocean. But people just don't do it through the lack of education. It's small things like buy an electric toothbrush. If you've got an electric toothbrush or a bamboo toothbrush, every month, 2 months, you're not throwing away a piece of plastic that might be recycled or might just end up on a beach somewhere. If you're wanting to help anti-poaching, sign up to an anti-poaching program or donate £10 to a small charity that you know it's going to go there. Veterans for Wildlife. It's going to hit there and it's going to do something about it. If you want to help climate change, walk a bit more. Don't drive your car. Get a train. Buy an electric car. There's little things that you can do in your daily life that's going to help those big picture. But I think that the issue is that people just want that instant win. You know, bringing it right back to what we're talking about. People want that instant win, so you fight for what you can control, which then leaves the
Sometimes
disease.
I find people don't even want to have the conversation in the first place. It's no one enjoys being made to feel guilty, do they?
Yeah, no, 100%.
You have the conversation, all of a sudden you go, oh yeah, I shouldn't do that, do that, and it makes people feel uncomfortable, doesn't it? I'd rather just put their head in the sand, ignore it.
Yeah.
No, it's
Ostrich
fine. La 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 la.
Yeah, being open to discussion is good. I do see people that are friends of mine that are open to it, and even if they say something that I disagree with, or maybe they don't know something that I know, you know, you shouldn't be threatened if someone approaches you with
An
additional
argument.
information,
Yeah,
or a
definitely
little
not.
debate. You know,
Definitely not.
The problem is the human greed is always a big thing. Even going for electric cars, electric cars started as really cost efficient. I mean, I don't get me wrong, the initial cost is pretty high, but to charge your car was cheap. But now they're making it really expensive.
Yeah.
So it's actually now basically the same price as fuel, like as petrol.
That's part of the. That's part of the reason why it's not getting changed, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much tax on the.
It's
on
not
the oil.
commercially viable, is
And
it?
actually, like the lithium batteries, like the whole Prius thing was kind of like interested me, because the way I got told was that to make the batteries in these cars, you got to have a big old lithium mine in Canada, a big old nickel mine in China, and then you got to ship all these. And actually, the process of making these batteries is so much worse than just buying a new car.
And the argument is the network's not even there anyway to support it if you did have a car.
And what are you going to do with these battered batteries? You can't dispose of massive batteries.
Stick them in the ocean, we do everything else.
Yeah, so it's like, actually, I mean, don't get me wrong, if someone knows more about this, let me know, because this is my stance on it, is that actually electric cars are probably more damage to the environment than they are having a petrol car.
I think
If anything, buy a used old petrol car, you know, because then actually the petroleum isn't crazy bad. It's just the way the engines are using these fuels. Because like diesel, you know, diesel back in the 80s was, you know, the dirty
it was
diesel.
the thing, wasn't
It's
it?
The dirty diesel,
yeah.
but now diesels now are really clean. So, I don't know. Let me know if you know.
There's-
Yeah,
but
smart
then there's a
people.
move away again from diesel, isn't there?
Yeah,
Because of
it's
the
a big
diesel
push.
particulates, just for human, short-term human health.
Yeah, especially, I mean,
breathing it
in London, they're introducing that. It used to be any diesel older than 2010, you can't
Yeah.
bring it to central London. But now they're doing it, no diesels can go into
Yeah,
into London.
I heard a thing the other day that like 2040 they want to eradicate diesels altogether or something, or there is
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no more diesel or something
or
petrol.
traditional diesels as they are, or something like that. I'm
But
not
it's
sure.
definitely something, with the pollution from the battery mining and the shipping is definitely an argument I've heard before.
Yeah.
I've never really heard the riposte to that.
No,
It's something I need to delve into, I think.
my biggest thing about electric cars is the cost effective of it. You know, it isn't cost effective. You know,
spent
there's,
100 grand on an electric car.
there's a lot that go out there.
But
at the
that's
moment,
always
but
the
it's not
case
cost-effective.
with new
the first ones.
Yeah.
You pay for the
new
research
new
costs.
technology, and then
But then you're going into the argument of like the battery recycling batteries,
Yeah.
because you've got like, you know, when it's the whole, you know, when Richard Hammond crashed that electric supercar, and then it took, was it 2 weeks or 2 months for the battery to stop igniting.
Yeah.
So they're extinguishing, and then because there's so many little cells, that one will die out, then that will
the next one
ignite.
will start. Yeah.
So imagine that on like a global scale. You've got like 20
Yeah.
million of these electric cars in the dump.
Well, I even
But
read.
then is that not teething problems?
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
new
potentially,
technology.
I mean, maybe in like, not in our lifetime, but
I even read something the other day that Tesla, the commercial sector of Tesla, is in when you buy a Tesla car and things like that, they're actually now I need a wee.
Yeah, that's right.
They're actually not making a profit,
yeah, I got told
and
that.
Tesla are only still a business for the commercial work that they do in the
Model
in
S's.
sort of like the industrial sector. You know, the plants, the electronic items and components that they sell to different things. That's where they make their money.
I heard
But don't know
Elon
if
Musk
that's
say
true.
that there's only one car company in history that's never gone bust. and that's Ford.
He also called that rescue diver a pedo. You see that? It's in like news at the moment.
What?
One of the Thai rescue divers.
Right.
He called him. You know the
Also
football team in Thailand that got trapped, and all the international rescue
in the
divers
cave?
went out to, in the
Yeah.
cave. He's called one of the, because you know the submarine that Elon Musk went over and said, let's use this. It's like a child-sized submarine to get them out.
Right.
This guy turned around and said, that's stupid. It's never going to work. You're just doing this for publicity. So Elon Musk called him a pedo.
That's such a
No evidence to back that up, right? Maybe.
Who cares? It's Elon
fuck
Musk.
off, you pedo.
On Twitter, like, do one, you pedo. Like, it's
It's like-
amazing.
it's
But
kinda
he's being
like-
sued for like $65,000 now or
Oh,
something.
man. But I do
God.
kind of appreciate the no bullshit.
cool, but
I'm just so.
Just
It's
makes me laugh.
funny, isn't it?
I feel like we're so
Yeah.
diluted with like political nonsense, like people
yeah.
trying to protect themselves, and he's just like, I don't give a shit.
Nah.
Here you
Smoke
go.
weed on Joe
Rogan.
Rogan's podcast. Like,
I think people want honesty. Like
Yeah.
that's why podcasts
Yeah.
are becoming such a big thing,
Yeah.
and people are just
bored.
saying what the fuck they
We're
want.
just crying out for authenticity.
yeah.
It's just like, oh,
I think it's just that whole that's the change, the millennial change, if you like. People are going away from. Back in the day, it was all about looking good. Everything wanted to look and seem perfect, and if it wasn't, you pretended it was, and you made it perfect on the front. Whereas now people don't care. They're, if anything, they're less superficial
They wanna
when
see
we're
the
moving away.
humanism in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and less social media influencers are becoming influencers because all they're doing is showing them with jets and cars. It's
Yeah.
reducing. It's still bad, but it is reducing. But it comes down to the whole. People. You can sit there with a vegan, have that conversation, and I had one recently, and he was like, "Yeah, you're part of the problem because you eat meat." So I'm part of all the world's problems because I eat meat. However, I do a lot to reduce my plastic and to help the oceans. I go on anti-poaching projects. I walk and I reduce my emissions as much as possible. Anything carbon neutral clothing wise, I always go for that first. So really, when you look at all the little things I do,
being sold as meat being the problem is.
Yeah.
and I
But
even reduce I barely have any beef. I
Yeah.
don't really have dairy full stop anyway, occasional cheese, but just because of my dietary choices, I don't really eat beef
Also,
much.
if you have
So-
pasture raised meat, it has the releases no more
Yeah.
greenhouse gases than arable agriculture, which actually ploughing. Well, it's not at the moment, but yeah, ploughing fields releases a lot of carbon.
Yeah.
Actually, but if you have grazing animals, it's just none of it. It
Yeah.
doesn't stand up. And also, I mean, even the entirety of CO2 emissions from agriculture or greenhouse gas emissions only equates to about under 14% of global emissions.
I saw that figure on Instagram.
And a lot of that is calculated from actually machinery on site, transport.
Well, it's actually, what's quite interesting.
It's not the battleground, but I think it's useful for politicians to push that as the main cause of climate change,
Yeah.
because it puts the blame onto the populace and stops them having to actually address the real
and it
issues.
suits the sort of the drive at the moment. Veganism is the in thing, if you like, at the moment. That's one of the current fads, and it's sort of essentially that supports that argument quite heavily. And obviously a lot of vegans go to the Cowology or whatever it was, that Netflix documentary that made the claims that 90% of greenhouse emissions are due to the beef trade and things like that, which have now been debunked by a lot more things.
People
and then
like to fit
people
their
argue-
narrative.
Yeah.
There's the thing,
Yeah.
but
Also,
honestly, I don't know a lot about this stuff, and I think I got a buddy of mine that I follow a lot of his debates online, and I'd love to get him on. I'm going to try to lock him down because he knows a lot about climate change, and there's a lot of things I do want to pick his brain on, because there's some things that I've heard that I want him to clarify and also educate me if I've misheard something. Because I think the whole climate change thing is this is something that I just I heard from some nether, is that you just need one volcano to basically change the whole thing. And really what does cows do if a volcano goes? But this is my own bad bad education on this.
Going back to agriculture as well. I was just going to say that so much of farmland that's used for livestock isn't suitable for arable agriculture. Like, I mean, try the Scottish Highlands full of sheep. Try growing wheat on there instead of having livestock. It's just another.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not
don't get me wrong. I think there's always going to be another problem that you could be an absolute saint, you could be a monk, you could do nothing that affects the world negatively. Someone's going to pick a problem with that,
Call you out.
and say, well, you're not helping the homeless, are you? You know, you could be
exactly.
a vegan that lives in a completely green house that only wears hemp clothing, and someone's going to turn around and say, well, you know, you're killing all the trees. Deforestation is your problem, you know, because you're using paper to write that. There's always going to be something. And if you can just do a little bit, if everyone just does a little bit to change the things that are most personal to them, we're going to do a lot more. Whereas most people do nothing and then just talk about it and say, I'm not doing anything because this is more of an issue. Well, are you doing something about that? No, but it is more.
Yeah.
Just do something. Just do something.
To me,
Everyone's on their own little personal journey.
conscientious omnivory is more the goal.
2 words I don't understand. I like it. Nice.
I like it.
Eating meat and vegetables, but in a thoughtful way. Because I mean, factory farming you can't argue that's a great thing. So yeah, if you can try and eat more free range, high quality meat, even if you eat a bit less of, because it's more expensive, eat a bit less of it. So you can
make some substitutes. You know, if you have some corn substitutes, things like that. Yeah, it's all about just do what you want within your world, like, because then it's sustainable and you do it. You know, you can go full hog and go bang. I'm going to go only wear hemp clothing. I'm going to go and do this. I'm going to go do that, and it's a massive lifestyle change. And only a few people will actually be able to do that. So if a few people do massive drastic changes, the overall impact on the world isn't going to be a lot. Whereas if a lot of people did small changes, it's going to be a big impact on the world.
Yeah. So I mean, they can manage easily. And I think on that fine note,
Save the rhinos.
Save the rhinos.
Save the rhinos.
If you got time, definitely check out
Veterans for Wildlife.
Veterans for Wildlife.
Yes.
Be more conscious about
Donate all your monies.
All of it.
All of it.
That bill next week, forget about it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. And give some money to my Patreon account.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
thong
lager.
photos.
PJ wearing thongs, let's see that one.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Signing out.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you for coming on.
See you later.